It depends. Obviously, scientists cannot completely remove themselves from their own background and personal feelings about any particular community issue. And the scientists should be, in general, allowed to express those views as a partner in the community. I think, however, there are certain organizations within the community whose role it is to try to present objective information about the science. And I emphasize the word try because this is a tightrope, and it's not always possible to at least be perceived as neutral on a particular topic. But places like museums, perhaps like Cooperative Extension, and other entities exist to provide good quality information, or to make accessible or to gather good quality information on scientific topics that is applicable to these community issues. And their role is not to play the role of advocacy in a particular position. Of course, it may happen that the scientific consensus on a particular topic does suggest that action needs to be taken that then is political. So, for example, there may be policy implications. There certainly are policy implications to the scientific consensus that climate change is a real thing. It wouldn't necessarily be a museum's role or a university's role to push legislation or how you deal with climate change. It is their role to say, here's the information, and it does suggest that climate change is real and there's going to be a problem if we don't do anything about it. So I think in terms of dealing with the backlash, I think that there may be nothing that one can do other than to speak as carefully and respectfully as possible to all parties, and understand that some people may perceive one as being in the other camp if they don't hear what they want to hear. But on the other hand, I think that even though science and policy I'm sure there's a fuzzy boundary there, in principle, the scientific information is not equivalent to the policy. And so scientists can share their findings, and then other people can form conclusions about where to go with community action. I think that scientists certainly have a role in providing and making accessible information that's critical to taking action on areas that will influence humanity, whether it's at the community or global level. Climate change is a piece of that. And I think I don't have an answer to the best way for scientists to do that, but usually it's most appropriate for scientists to work through some kind of organization that's providing, that represents a group of scientists, as opposed to going individually. And scientific consensus is the basis by which we need to make decisions that influence the entire country or even the entire world. How to do that in terms of my own personal experience, working in a museum setting, we think a lot about how to reach a wide variety of stakeholders, some of whom are coming at this with widely different opinions. You can't go to all audiences with the same approach or the same kind of information. And some audiences, speaking of climate change, some audiences who don't think climate change is real may, however, be interested in the economic benefits of energy efficiency. And so in some cases we can achieve goals that we all agree upon because we have a common interest in energy efficiency, for example. So we're actually in the process right now of putting together a survey to try to understand better the perceptions and opinions of rural communities in New York State. Rural communities themselves can be quite diverse, and so we'll see whether they might vary depending on whether the rural community is dominated by agriculture or tourism or some other thing. But our interest is in what kinds of information would be helpful, what would people listen to, who are respected individuals in rural communities who could help provide information about both climate change and energy efficiency, and how should that vary from place to place. That's just one example. We also reach teachers and school children and public audiences in Ithaca and urban settings and so on. Each of those audiences has different interests, different backgrounds. They come at the question in different ways, and I think that we need to think carefully about how we serve the needs of those different stakeholders when we're talking about these kinds of issues.